Alright, welcome to the first Quelmar Arkenforge tutorial that we'll be putting on our channel here for the Quelmar realm. This is going to be a tutorial that walks you through basically, I don't want to say the basics, because by the end of this tutorial, you'll be able to run an entire game out of Arkenforge, everything you need. But it is the basics of everything. So it's going to go through all the steps you need to be prepared to run Arkenforge, whether you're running it through a TV, you're running it through a projector like I do, or even if you're running it online. So I am James Ruth, president of the Quelmar Realm, and today we've actually got a few people with us who will be working alongside. So if you see cuts here and there, it's probably because I'm going to be working with them and helping them through any sort of hurdles they run into. But yeah, cool. Let's do step one. So step one is you're gonna have an Arkenforge launcher that gets put on your desktop or your taskbar after you install it. That's gonna bring you into the launcher itself. You're gonna go ahead and launch Arkenforge. In the future, you're just gonna launch the main one, but for today, we're gonna launch the Arkenforge beta. You'll get this beautiful animation. And it's going to drop you off here. We're using the beta, so just say yes to this thing that says, hey, just so you know, this is a beta. All right, so Arkenforge is built for... it is built for live play. Unlike something like Foundry or Roll20, who have funneled a ton of their resources and their architecture into that online connection experience, Arkenforge is really, I like to think of Arkenforge a lot like I think of Photoshop. It is a canvas. It is this massive sandbox or playground in that you can create anything you want and put it out there, but it doesn't have any online connectivity. It's not for you to put out to somebody else directly. It's for you to put out to a TV or to a projector, or if you are playing online, you can always capture it, like with a display capture, and put it out on like Zoom or Discord or any way you want to do it like that. As such, because it is just a canvas, an Arkenforge map is really just made up of whatever you choose to put down on it. And I'm going to basically show us how to do that. But first, the first thing we do want to do, if you haven't already, when you launch Arkenforge for the first time, go into your settings. And you're going to go into the widgets settings. I recommend most people just turn everything on. By default, I think only one or two of them is on. But these widgets, which will now live on the top row here, are going to give you a ton of super useful shortcuts. I'm going to go and show you the player screen. For some of you, you are probably hooked up to only one screen. So I recommend coming back to this and looking at this part when you are connected to a TV or a projector or something. Because I'll show you how it works. So if you have a second monitor set up, in this case I've got a TV set up over here that I'm connected to. When you click the player screen button for the first time, it's going to ask you, hey, what screen is our game screen? What is the table? And in this case, you'll usually have only two things, like your computer you're running off of, and then the table itself. So you'll just click that second screen. And you'll want to make it where it says player's screen. So that, once you say second screen, player's screen, you click next. And when you activate that, nothing happens on the Arkenforge screen. Nothing happened here. But on the TV, it just switched over. It just became the game screen instantly. And then you'll want to click the player screen button again, where it says show player box. You can click that. Or you can just click the icon. And that'll give you this awesome box. I'll jump back. We'll go back here. So this box is a camera, essentially. Whatever this box is focused on, the players are going to just see that. That is what the other TV is showing. So if you're ever trying to figure out, like, oh, am I showing them the right part of the map? Or am I getting everything in the picture? The player box does that for you. So if you need to scale it in, say you got the scaling just slightly wrong, you can drag it in, you can drag it out. I'll show you on the other monitor, you can actually see that sort of happening live. You know, if I make it real small, the grid squares on the TV get really big, and same if I zoom out. Um, and that's and that's the key thing. More than anything else, Arkenforge gives you this basically in 2 clicks. It creates a camera of your map, of your canvas, and broadcasts it to the second location. So now that we know how Arkenforge works at its core, it's one screen that you work on, it's one screen that you broadcast on, your TV. Here's how you make it fun. Here's how you go from a blank canvas to a map that you can really engage with and do all sorts of crazy cool stuff with. All of the map building tools are under the map building. Let's do this. There we go. On the left, there is map building. So when you click that, it'll give you all of the things you can create. You can create assets, which includes anything from textures to patterns to lines and walls to floors to animals to tokens. You can do colors, which is just flat colors. It's super, super simple for blocking. Lights, which, like any other virtual tabletop, is you can set it to shine through fog of war, or you can just set it to set a dramatic lighting over a situation, like a dramatic red light or something. Barriers, which are strictly for fog of war situations. They are just invisible walls that light can't shine through. So it's really useful to have barriers when you're working with existing maps and you want to just block it off like you will do in Foundry or Roll20. And then the eyedropper is the special one. You just eyedrop and then grab something from your map and you'll instantly be placing that again, whatever it is. So, who's got an idea for what we want to build? Do we want to build a park or a forest? Do we want to build a small town? I'm taking ideas, and then I'm going to walk us through making exactly that to show you how simple it is.
Sure. We should make a apothecary shop.
Okay, yeah, okay. Sure, we can go there. So, the suggested location or map to make today was a apothecary, like an alchemist lab, a potions brewer. So we'll do that. We'll make one simple map, that you can plop down on a table, on a TV or a projector, and it can just be that shop. It can take place in that shop. So, like any shop, we're gonna start actually with cobblestone because I like cobblestone for streets. We're gonna assume that this shop is in a city. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with our first thing we're ever going to place. You can browse through these cobblestones. There's going to be a ton of them, I'm sure. And find one that you like. I'm just going to grab... Let's see. I'm going to grab one of these darker cobblestones here. And now, once you've clicked it, you'll find that Arkenforge wants you to drop it down like a token. And that's not what we want. We're not going to click 1,000 times to make cobblestone. So we have to say that we are making a tiled asset. We're making a texture. And so whenever you go to grab something in Arkenforge, whether it's an object or a place or a texture, you're going to go under the file list. Down here, it's got placement types. And this is where you pick out what you want it to be. By default, it'll say object. And we're going to click tile, which is the second option. So again, you click the cobblestone, you go over here to placement types, you say tile. You say, I'm going to do a tile of cobblestone. And that's going to give you what you want. Now you can, place it, square it off however you want. And now that we have things on the board, I can actually demonstrate a little bit better. With our second monitor, this player view box, you can see how it is a camera. And so exactly whatever the player view box is looking at, that's what the other TV is going to look at. Here, well, let's do this. I'll show you all the things you can do. Spoiler alert, there is no simple circle tile, but there are ways to get around that. So the breakdown of the types is as follows. You've got objects, which you can click and it'll place it like a token. You can go under there and there are subtypes. There is the tiled object, which means it doesn't make a ton of sense because we're working with textures, but when you draw it out, it's going to take that token and it's just going to do exactly that. It's going to tile that token, whatever you grabbed, and fill up the area. Unlike the normal tiled thing, it does not treat this as one item. It's literally placing that token enough times to fill the space. This can be really useful for things like forests. So if you grab a tree and you want to just like draw a square and be like, I want trees here, it'll fill that whole area with trees. Um, there it goes. Uh, and the way you can control that, and we'll look at this later when we put some trees down, but there's a density option. So you could go really, really not dense, and now you see how it's not so tight. It's actually just creating pretty regular positions of tokens. Um, and the last one is the brush. The brush is really great. You know, you drag and you can just put as many of those tokens down as you want. So the object placement is exactly what you think. It's for objects. Any sort of object, whether it's a prop or a tree or a thing, it's really just great for just plopping them down. The tiles, you can do like we were describing. You can tile it, and you just get a big square texture. You can do the brush tile, which is... I'll zoom in a little for this. This lets you draw it out, so whatever you're trying to fill in. It's got some really great things like the opacity you can change, so you get like a really, a little softer. The more opaque you go, the softer it gets. So I'm getting some really, really soft cobblestone here. Great for texturing and detailing the street. And then the last of the tile subtypes is the polygon. And this is what I would recommend if somebody was like, I want to make a circle. I would honestly say take the polygon and make... it won't give you a perfect circle, but you can make something close enough. And that gives you your circle. The third type, so we've gone over objects, we've gone over tiles. The third type is the line. The line is basically your go-to wall brush. Anything you want to do that is wall-like, it goes from A to B. You can change its width, so you can get massive lines. You know, if these squares are 5 feet, you know, I've just made a road. I've just made a 4-foot wide cobblestone path. You can go into the subtypes and you can connect lines. So if I do polygon, I actually get to connect all of these lines however I want. And then this is the other thing I was going to show you, is that you can do a circle line, which means that. Now, unfortunately, it does not fill in. So you can either take the brush and fill it in, or you can take a bunch of circles and fill it in. I do it either way, depending on what I really need at the moment. But so you can see how now I've got that empty section in the middle. I'll just take the brush, I'll fill it in. And that gets you a pretty close approximation of a circle. And oh, there is one more type. I gotta confess, I never use this type because I don't put my notes in Arkenforge, but Arkenforge is a full-fledged encyclopedia as well. So the note type, which is the last one here, if you place it, it doesn't create just like an object. It creates a token. So if I go in and I place the object, so this one on the right is an object. If I double click it, nothing happens. I can, it's just a scenery. If I double click the one I placed as a note, it actually opens up a whole window of everything that I can store in that note. So I can call it something. I can say this is Cobblestone Man. And I can create like a little field of text, info, and then I can put all the information. Cobblestone Man was born in Japan. And you can add stat blocks, so you can give him HP. I'm not going to go over this a ton because this is not my style, and there are other tutorials online if you are trying to build Arkenforge into Roll20 like this. I personally am not super versed in it, so I can't help you too much. But yes, that is what the last one, the note, is. It lets you take any object and place it down and turn it into a whole thing in and of itself. All right, so that's the review of all of the ways you can put things down in Arkenforge. That's it. Everything you put down in Arkenforge, it's gonna be one of those things. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna we're gonna start by just doing a canvas, a cobblestone street. So I'm gonna grab my cobblestone that I liked. I'm gonna go into tile, and I am going to draw it out. I'm gonna fill up the whole player board. So you can see the other screen is now just that street. Now this is nice, but as we zoom in, this tile texture, this cobblestone texture is very small, and it's not quite to scale. It's not. It could afford to be a little bit bigger, I think. So that takes us to the second half of Arkenforge Relief. The first half is putting things down. The second half is adjusting them and changing them. So once you've put something down, you can click it in this customize option on the far left, which is underneath of map building, this magic wand. The customize feature will open up, and this gives you all the tools you need to change what you've put down. In this case, if I want the cobblestone to be a little bit bigger, I'm going to go into the tile settings. And this gives me all the options I need. I can change the scale. I can make the cobblestone much bigger or smaller. I can rotate the cobblestone. And then what's also very fun is you can add noise to the cobblestone. So you can, if you want to make it, not so repeating. Some textures repeat really obviously. This one is probably one of those. So you can add a little bit of noise, which breaks up the repetition. So we've got a street. So I'm going to start on the building itself now that I've got just a background that the building can sit on.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Can I change the color of the cobblestone?
Absolutely. So if you go into that customize and you go to color,
Oh, okay.
it gives you the full HSL. You can do hue, saturation, and lightness. You can even you can tint it, which is really useful. So if I've got other things on my map already and I want it to sort of live in that color range, there is also something really neat is there is a built-in chroma key feature. So anything you put down in Arkenforge, if it's got a colored background or it's got some element you want to just chroma key out, you can pick a color and chroma key that out. So for instance, I'll go in here, say I like that there is this broken tile, but I want I've got another texture I want to overlay underneath of it. So I really just want the gray bricks. I don't want the white. I can go into the chroma key. I can go into, actually, I'll pick the color. I'll say this sort of grayish color. And then I'll say get rid of that. And it's going to get rid of the white and just leave me with the cracks. Now I can take those cracks. I can put them anywhere I want. I can put them on anything. I've got the template of cobblestone without actually having the stones themselves. So you can imagine with this level of versatility and so many different textures and patterns, you can create anything you want if you're looking at grounds and textures and walls and patterns. They give you so many different options. But yeah, that's sort of the basics of adjusting. We'll go over some more stuff later, but that shows you how you can create and adjust anything. So we're going to go back into map building. We're going to go back into assets. And now we're going to pick a floor out. Feel free to change. I'm going to just pick a boring wooden planks. So I'm going to type in plank. But you guys are welcome to switch it up. If you want to make yours have marble floors, if you want to make yours have floors made of blood or anything else, go for it. I am just going to grab a very simple... do I have a darker wood? Let's see. I always imagine apothecaries as being sort of shadowy. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to grab this really dark wood. And in this case, I'm not going to use the tile like this, the box, because I want my apothecary to have a fun shape. And this is, again, definitely feel free to invent your own shape. I'm going to do a more boring shape. I'm going to create the floor plan with the polygon tool. So I'm going to click my wood. I'm going to click on tile, and then I'm going to pick the polygon tiles, which lets me just draw a shape instead of doing a box. Mine's going to be an L. So once you start dropping those points down, you'll see it'll give you a little ghost image, like what you can expect. Once you've drawn the floor of your shop, you can right-click, and it'll drop it down. Again, the texture's out of scale. I got to fix that. Go into customize, tile, and texture scale. We'll make it lined that way as well. All good buildings need walls. So this is where we're going to dive a little bit into that the line asset. What's really great about the line asset in Arkenforge is while other things like Incarnate or Dungeon Draft sort of lock you into like you need to have the right wall asset to make walls, Arkenforge lets you make walls out of anything. So in this case, I'm actually going to grab, just to show this off, I'm grabbing another type of wood plank straight from the same list I was just looking at. And then I am going to just go to line placement, and I'm going to use that other type of wood to mark out my walls. And it looks kind of flat right now, but I'm going to fix that in a second. Just wait. So when you've got walls, or any line really, some lines are decorative and they're flat looking. They're meant to just sort of enhance or help build on a pattern. But when you've got walls, a really important thing is the drop shadow. So this time I'm going to go to customize, and instead of changing like the tiling or anything like that, I'm going to go to this blocking tab. And the blocking tab lets me activate a drop shadow. And you can see right now, I'll zoom in a little bit, immediately that wall on the left now looks like a wall. The ones on the right, those aren't walls. But the one on the left, that's a wall. So just by making anything into a line asset and then turning on the drop shadow, let me get the rest of these, you've got walls. So now, like Gavin is doing, this is a opportunity to have some fun, to put whatever we feel like goes inside our building. And by doing that, it's as simple as maybe I think my building needs shelves. So I'll go into the search bar. So I'll type in shelf. That's going to give me a couple of shelves. I'm going to see which ones I like. I've got some bookshelves. I'm going to click. And then just like I'm working in any other tool, if I'm working in PowerPoint or Photoshop, I'm just going to take those items and I'll move them around. I'll resize them. I'll put them in corners. I've got so many different options that it's really just, a matter of how do I picture the space in my head versus how do I want to present it to the players. This is the part that's really hard to teach because, it's more art than skill at this point. There is a whole folder of just Alchemist Lab. I think we've all seen it at this point. It's super easy to just go in there and grab a bunch of things. That's the great turtle rug from when they had to extract the turtle essence for that one really difficult potion. I mean, this is the part I can't really teach, right? Creating a scene means knowing the scene, and there's all sorts of storytelling things that go into this, right? Like what is the history and what's the implied storytelling, the what's it called, like the scenic storytelling. What can you discern from what's around? If you place a giant scorch mark, something I love to do is, you can just type in scorch and you'll get a whole bunch of scorch marks that pop up. These are just, the players don't need to know what blew up, but something blew up here before, which is not surprising because it's a bit of an alchemy lab, a bit of an apothecary. Cauldrons. Apothecaries need cauldrons. So many cauldrons in this apothecary. Rachel, what else goes into an apothecary? And drop things inside. Another thing to think about is you can put interior walls. So it doesn't have to be all one big open space. You can always break it up into smaller spaces, like I'm doing here. That's just like with the outside walls. All I'm doing is I'm dropping more of these lines, and then I'm going to make these lines have a drop shadow. Customize, blocking, drop shadow. Uh, there you go. And now we've got a couple more walls that break up the interior. Oh, and doors. So assets, I'm going to just search for door. It's giving me a fit. There we go. Doors. This door. So I'll drop that there. To front door. Most basic shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, will also work in Arkenforge. So if you click on a symbol and you Control C, you can then move your mouse somewhere else and Control V, and you can paste that thing you just copied. You can do it with multiple things. I wanted to copy all 4 of these cauldrons. I could then Control C, and now anywhere I Control V, it drops just a whole bunch of cauldrons. Yeah, it's weird to say, but I really do feel like one of the tools that most people are familiar with that Arkenforge is similar to is PowerPoint. The way that you just sort of drop clip art in and you copy and paste it and scale it and turn it, it's almost identical to the PowerPoint experience, right? All the handles are the same, all the keyboard shortcuts are the same. So now, in order to get our shop in spooky mode, cool. So we're all going to go up to the time of day widget, and we're going to set it to night. When you have the time set to day in Arkenforge, it's day everywhere. So that means it's daylight inside the building, it's daylight outside the building. That means lights don't show up really well. They show up a little bit, but like, holding a flashlight in the daytime, it's not great. So to really show off any sort of spookiness, you got to go into night mode. You got to make sure you've got the whole map set to night. This also, just a small note, if you're underground, if you're underwater, if you are basically anywhere that you need it to be dark, you want to make sure you've clicked the night button. Arkenforge is actually analog, so you can actually go into the time of day settings, and you can toy around if you're like, oh, that's too dark. Maybe it's like sunset or sunrise. And you can pick specifically what time of day it is. But for lighting and for especially a spooky atmosphere, you want it to be as dark as possible, absolute night. And then we're going to go into the map building again, except this time we're not going to go into assets. We're not going to go into that list with all the walls and items and floors. We're going to go into lights. When we go into lights, Arkenforge has a few presets that are nice to use. I will almost always just use one of these and then adjust it from there. In this case, I'm going to do the candle light, and I'm going to drop a couple of candles around my table. I'll put one here. I'll put one back here in the library. I'll put one in the cauldrons. And depending on what scale you made your map at, on how zoomed in or out you are, they might be really bright, they might not be bright at all. So you'll need to make sure you change their brightness by clicking on them. And just like with the tiles, just like with everything else, you go to Customize, the magic wand. And then you can go into lighting. All of the lights have this lighting area, and then you can change their brightness. Candles come with a radius of 1 by default. They're really just meant to light up one area. I'm going to change all of these candles to have a radius of 10 to be really dramatic. Because I used the candle preset, and because hopefully you use the candle preset too, you'll see that they automatically come with a flickering. That's you can adjust the rate of flicker and all of that yourself if you want, but the default candle's got a nice flicker to it. I'm going to also fix my interior walls. I noticed aren't blocking that light necessarily, so I need to go in. I click on them. I go to Customize. I go to Blocking, and I turn on the Block Light feature. Now none of the candle light is shining through the interior walls. And if I click on a candle, I'll zoom in here. I'll click on a candle, and I move it around. I can see that that wall is stopping that light directly. Now, Rachel said that we wanted spooky lighting, so I don't think normal white light is going to be spooky enough. I'm going to change the color of this light to be red. I'll change this one to be a haunting purple. Yeah, there you go. There's your spooky. I'll change this one to be blue. No, that feels it's too bright. We'll do red again. Make this one red. And to toy around a little bit with these lights, I'm going to just copy and paste a few more of them in here just to fill out the room. I'll put a light on the turtle. And that is lighting by default. That's just decorative lighting, scenic lighting. It helps make the map look spooky or cool or bright. But what lighting is also super important for, and Gav, this is what you were getting at, is the Fog of War feature. If you click the Fog of War button, it's going to make the map go slightly darker. If you click it a bunch, you can sort of see what I mean. Like, that's because as the DM, you need to be able to see through the Fog of War. If I look at my second monitor, though, you'll see that it went completely black. If I turn off Fog of War, everything's there. If I turn on Fog of War, it goes completely black. So in order to carve through the Fog of War, in order to see through the Fog of War, you have to, just like we did for the walls, we had to turn them on to block. We're going to go to Customize. We're going to pick a light that we want to shine through Fog of War. We're going to click on Customize. We're going to click on Lighting. And then there is a simple option right there. It says Shines Through Fog. When you click that, you'll see that it actually shines through, it like on the DM's side of things. That darker area, when everything went dark, actually goes away because the light is now shining through it. And if I switch back to my two monitors, I can see that this light now will eat away at the Fog of War as I drag it through the map like a spooky haunted house. What's behind this door? Oh no, it's bookshelves that look like tables. By default, Gavin, the Fog of War is set to brush, which is kind of like, if you've seen it once, you know it's there. So we're just going to unveil anything that the light touches. But if you go into your Fog of War options, which means mousing over it and then clicking more options, you can set the mode. It says brush plus vision. If you set it to just vision, this is what I often do at the table. You might have played a game with this. If you set it to just vision, that means that only things that are actively being lit at this moment will be visible. So it doesn't uncover the fog. It really is just shining through it. It's probably I can demonstrate this if I pull up the other monitor. So when I move this light, it no longer, everywhere that I leave goes back into darkness. And only the things around that light are visible. It needs a shop pet. What, the turtle rug isn't good enough for you? In fact, let me do this. I'm going to change the player view box just so it can show how you can zoom in for the players. I can make that, I can really zoom in on the turtle for the players if I go in and I alter the size of the player view box. And I'll go over here to this big desk we've set up and I will drop a frog on it. Well, we're going to make all of our animals twice as spooky. I'm going to grab a frog real fast. And everybody's going to go ahead and click on their shop pet, whether it is a goat or a frog or a dog. And we're going to make them 10 times spookier. And the way we're going to do that is by going over to Customize. And we're going to go to this. The bottom option for Customize is Effects. And the Effects menu is powerful. It's almost too powerful. You can go absolutely crazy with effects, but if you go too crazy, your map starts to feel like a circus. It's got so many different crazy things going on. So I like a garnish, I always recommend to use effects only a little bit, but where they are effective. And here, Spooky Pet Shop, we are going to click on Add New Effect, and we're going to make our pets float. And when we do that, I'll zoom in here, you can see that our pet is now floating up and down like something is hovering. It's flying through the air. Ooh. Uh, if you want to get a little more exorcist, you can change the effect or put on top of it. You can give it a shake. You can really up the intensity there if you want. Now that might be too scary. I'm gonna turn down my frog here, my poor friend. There you go. Um, but effects are super, super, super cool. You can blink them so that they sort of disappear and then reappear. You can make them spin. So because I've applied all of my effects at the same time, I've now got a floating, blinking, spinning, shaking frog, uh, which is absolutely terrifying. And if I was a player and I walked into a room with this thing on the table, I would leave and find somewhere else to shop. But yes, so that is a super super amazing thing that Arkenforge will let you do. Is take anything on the board. You can apply any object on the board. You can give it a shake or a pulse. There's the thing, so like it sort of like breathes, it pulses. Really useful, really nice. Effects can be applied differently to different types of items. So the thing we just showed off is all of the object effects. If you click on something like the floor, you'll see that it doesn't have the same types of effects. So for instance, I can't make the floor shake, I can make it blink, and I can make it scroll. Scroll is, I guess I gotta zoom in, it's a little subtle. Uh, but scroll is something really really handy for things like water, for things like gases, for things like um, conveyor belts. Being able to take any texture and give it a infinite scroll in any direction is super super powerful at creating a dynamic looking map. um, I would say in my personal experience, water is the thing that I use scroll for more than anything else, but I will typically find somewhere in every map that I could use a scroll. I'm not going to make this floor scroll anymore because now I'm going to get sick. The floor is spinning. Uh, yeah. So now that we've set up our spooky pet, we've got some spooky lighting. I'm going to go back into daytime, and then you'll actually see sort of what I meant before, where the shop is now barely as spooky as it was before, because lighting just doesn't show up really well in the daytime. I was going to put some trees in a little garden area outside. So, and I'm going to go ahead and just walk you through how to sprinkle down some trees and some flowers using that object brush tool that we looked at the beginning. So in my case, I'm going to go grab a tree. Again, I just search for everything all of the time. So I'm just going to search for tree. And I'm going to grab a tree. This one looks good. Now I can take my brush tool, so I'll go to Object, Object Brush, and when I paint this, it's not going to just paint a tree texture, it's going to drop a tree everywhere I brush. In this case, the trees are too dense. I'm not trying to make a hedge, so I'm going to undo, and I'm going to go down to where it says Brush Density in the bottom left, and I'm going to turn that probably about 25%. And then that's a little more scattered, a little more nice. Uh, Unfortunately, my trees are small. This symbol is very small. So I really want to show you guys an important thing to know, and it's like a secret, like a cheat code in Arkenforge, because you will run into this if you're working with different graphics libraries. They're not always going to be to scale to each other, and it's a headache if every time you had to place a tree, oh, this symbol is a small symbol, I have to make sure I replace the symbol with a larger one. The secret is, and let me know if you guys are ready, because I'm gonna blow your minds. Right, so grab one of those trees you just put down and grow it or shrink it. In fact, you can change its color. Make it red or blue, or you can even make it float. What you can change that tree however you want, and if you right click it, Arkenforge in the right click, like so many people who work with Arkenforge don't know this. When you right click it, you can say set as default placement. When you do that, It'll give you a little note like, hey, I saved that. That tree symbol, it's now going to do exactly what you just set this one to do. That becomes the permanent version of that tree. Little scrolling mouse wheel. There we go. So now when I go and I grab that tree and I place it down, they all are that thing. And in the future, I can close out of Arkenforge and come back to it next week. That tree specifically is now that. That is the new symbol. So you can permanently adjust and save your symbols to be what you want them to be. So if you download a car online and it's too small, you need to rescale it out. Fix it, right click, save as default placement, and now that car is always going to be the right scale. So yeah, so you know what I'll take my new magic floating blue tree, and I am going to, now that it's the right size, now that it's the right scale for this, I am going to go into object and brush, and now I'm just going to brush that tree. I'm just going to take my mouse and just place a couple of them. All I'm doing is just clicking and moving the mouse around, and the software is just randomly dropping a tree where it sees fit. And then we can adjust. Got a crazy garden. This is obviously not of this world. I have now entered magic alien apothecary land. But yeah, a little bit of cleaning up. You fine tune where you want to place them after they've dropped down with that brush tool, and you've got some nice trees. Sometimes, like here, like I've just done, the trees feel a little too uniform. They're all the exact same symbol. They all look exactly like that. So the trick to using things like the object brush tool or the object tile tool is the shift key. Arkenforge, by default, will drop everything down as it is, but if you hold the shift key when dropping anything in Arkenforge, literally anything, it can be a wall or a tile or an object, if you've got the shift key held down, it's going to tweak it just a little bit in every direction. Just apply a little bit of a change in color, lightness, size. So if I don't hold down shift, I'll place two trees next to each other. It's two exact identical trees. If I hold down shift now and I place two more trees, you can see that these two are now, for instance, this one's been rotated 180 degrees and it's a little smaller and it's a little bluer. This one's a little more violet. It is just slightly smaller than the other one. So by using the shift key in combination with the object brush, you don't just get the same tree a bunch. You actually get a little menagerie of trees. All of them a little unique and different looking to give you a much cleaner and more presentable feel. So that's a world of difference compared to the very one-note garden of trees I just put out there. So yeah, so even if you had a single tree symbol, but you're like, that tree looks so good, I want to make a whole forest out of it. Thanks to the shift key, that's literally all it takes. If you're going to do anything in Arkenforge and you just want everything to be slightly askewed, you hold shift and you drop them down, and you can have as many of them as you want. You can have such a wide variety. So this is good. This is not bad for just playing around, learning the tools, making a little apothecary shop. But in my opinion, the last thing you really need to make these things come to life, especially the way I run games, which is not just a visual but sort of an audio experience, that Arkenforge helps you with, is to have a built-in soundscape or atmosphere built into your map. So if you guys are both ready, I will show you where you can go grab some of Arkenforge's built-in soundscapes and how you can just throw them right onto the map. Great. So I'm going to go down to the bottom left to where it says Global Search. The Global Search is, the more you get to use Arkenforge, the more you start to work with the cartographer and the audio and the soundscapes and the sound effects. The more you learn all the different parts of it, the more useful the global search becomes because it's a one-click shop to grab whatever you need. In this case, it's always super useful for dropping sounds onto the map. So I'm going to type in, well, first I'm going to change my content type in the search. Let me do this. In this search box that popped up, I'm going to say, let me do an ambience. So that'll just be like a looping, like Sirenscape does, right? An ambience. And since this is a city, I guess I'll type in city. That's mostly the built-in Arkenforge one. So I'm gonna do city library, since that sounds like it's a pretty close thing to an apothecary. And with Arkenforge, it's this simple. You ready? Click. I feel like I'm a salesman. You're not gonna believe your eyes. It's this simple. Click and drag the city library onto your map. That's gonna create a new thing. It looks a lot like those light tokens we put down. Let me make myself small. It's going to look like those light tokens we put down. It's going to be just this little indicator, little marker. The two rings that appear around it are the inner ring, which is green, means that anytime the player screen is focused or on that inner ring, it's going to play the audience at or play the ambience at full sound. The blue ring is the fall off. If the map is in that blue ring, it's going to, depending on how close it is to the green, it's going to get louder or softer. So that what you can do is, if you picture this as being a larger city that this is a part of, I could put this apothecary sound in the apothecary, and then if the map is on another building, you don't hear it, and as you drag the camera, you drag the player screen over to the apothecary sounds come into existence. And that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm going to drag this apothecary ambience button. I'm going to drag it into the building, and then I am going to change the size of these rings. In order to change the size of them, like anything else, you're just going to go to the wand, customize, and in this case, I'm going to click on where it says content link. That's what this is. It takes content, an audio or sound effect, and it links it to your map. I'm going to change these radiuses, these radii. So I'm going to make I want the inner one to cover pretty much the whole shop. Because if you're in the shop, you should be hearing the shop. And then I'm going to make the fall off, slightly larger than that. So, if you're just outside, you can hear a little bit of inside. And I'm not streaming the audio of my Arkenforge to you, so hopefully, even though you can't hear my stuff, you're hearing your own ambience play. And if you want to play with seeing what that does, I recommend you take the player view box, and you can take it like I am, and you can center it on the shop. And right now I'm hearing all the sounds, and as I move the view box away, the sounds go away. I bring it back, the sounds come back. I put it away, the sounds go away. So keep that in mind, that the sound is not based on what you, the DM, is looking at. It's based entirely on what the player screen is looking at. So if you are like, oh, I put this raging river down, why don't I hear it? Well, it's probably because your players are in town 3 miles up the street, and they're not looking at a raging river, so there's no raging river sound playing. Okay, so that more or less finishes this basic tutorial, because now what we're looking at, as I promised, from beginning to end, in this player view box, I have got a game. I've got a map, I've got walls for blocking the line of sight, I've got some sound going, and because Arkenforge is all built out of these symbols and objects and things, not only is it a player map, but it is a 100% dynamic player map. If a player wanted to walk over and take the frog off the desk, I can grab our little pet frog and I can take him with them. He can go into the next room. If a player wants to grab this bookshelf and move it in front of the door to block somebody from coming in, I can click it and pull it over just like they want. If they want to come down here and steal these crystals, I can just delete the crystals and they're gone. It's like I said, Arkenforge is not like Roll20 in that it's a software built basically on the connection and the sheets and the numbers and the dice. It is a software built on the sandbox. It's built on the immersion, the visuals, the audio, about being able to create something on the screen that you can present to real people in real life, like we do in Quelmar so often, and have that fun, interactive map experience. I think that just about wraps up this first tutorial, this first chapter. And what you should have learned is basically how to go from a blank, fresh, opened Arkenforge to a whole map of your choice. You can use all of these same principles, everything I taught you today, to make forests, to make towers, to make dungeons, to make volcanoes, to make anything at all. All of the cartography items are there to cover the whole range and gamut of what you need. And at that point, it's just about having fun, sitting back, getting creative, and inventing what that story is that you're going to throw your players through. Does anybody have any... I guess I'll take it to Q&A. That's going to wrap up our first map ever made in Arkenforge together, the first Quelmar tutorial for Arkenforge. From here, I'm going to just take it into Q&A mode if anybody has any questions or they want to talk about or look at anything else that we can do with this tool. And if you're on YouTube, thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.